Uh, I mentioned briefly that the compilation and study organized version of some of the elements of the dispensation of Baha'u'llah that we've been seeing is available. Matt here, if you give him your email address, we can arrange to have that forwarded to you. And also, I think it would help perhaps if you had immortal passages as well. And this is a breakdown of the quotations that were mentioned yesterday from the Advent of Divine Justice. Towards the end of the Advent of Divine Justice, Shoghi Effendi has added more quotations of similar to the Essential Verities or elaboration on some of them. And I've put them in a book, and there's one on each page with fairly large print, so you can read it until your last day, hopefully. And I keep this by my bedside so that I'm constantly renewing. Because of the things we saw yesterday from the Essential Verities, how it's our first duty to familiarize ourselves with these and to assimilate them. And if you ask practically any of us, what are the essential verities of the faith? They won't know what to answer. You ask yourself that. If it hasn't been renewed and thought about just recently, you would say, progressive revelation or something of the sort. But these quotations characterize the specific exalted nature of Baha'u'llah's revelation. They are quotes which apply to one revelation in 500,000 years. Mm-hmm. He is the universal manifestation for a universal cycle of at least 500,000 years. What is that? Mm-hmm. So the characterization of Baha'u'llah and the gradual realization of the influence that he will have on all the prophets of the rest of all the dispensations to come under his aegis, so to speak. He's not the source of their revelation. They're independent revelators and give the laws and teachings for the dispensation they come. But they derive their spiritual impetus, their authority from Baha'u'llah. How is that? This is extraordinary. And that's why we need to kind of read these points and assimilate, the Guardian said, that is a very interesting word, in our vision of the greatness of Baha'u'llah, which then converts in our vision of our image of Baha'u'llah, which then converts in the nature of our submission to him and our turning to him. And I can only imagine the future prophets will be busy making tafsir on hidden words. Individual hidden words will be the source of much elaboration. I don't know, we can't imagine, it's all, we're imagining how it's going to be, but we don't know for sure. All right, so I think there's a sign-up sheet somewhere. Is there a sheet now where you can put your email address on if you want to have these copies of these electronically? Okay. Or see Matt at the end of the session here. So the broad concept that I came here with was a refocus, that is returning us back to these original sources once again and reflecting on them and using them as the basis for a deeper quickening of our inner lives, that we might see the faith in such a way that we might act as the instruments of Baha'u'llah, which he promises he will raise up souls to teach his cause, and enable us to connect with those waiting souls who we can only imagine how desperate they are to know of the faith and haven't heard of the faith. Or something's a little different, having heard of the faith in a way that didn't attract them because of the way we may have presented it, enclosing it in a manner that might not be appropriate. This is why we want to teach the faith with ourselves out of the way. We want to come to the point where we've assimilated the influence of these verities and of the revelation, so that we can open our mouths and say the things Baha'u'llah wants us to say to the seekers that we meet. And if it's not through that influence of the Holy Spirit prompting the words that we say, Shoghi Effendi said there's no effect. There is no effect. Well, you might increase membership. You have roll call, and there's more people on the list, but they don't know what they're doing. It's so dependent. You say the cause is not growing. Why is it not growing? Are the people not receptive? The problem is if we don't play our role as distributors, as reflectors, as mirrors, as all of the commands of the tablets of the divine plan, which we presumably are trying to fulfill, if we don't humble ourselves at Baha'u'llah's threshold to the point where we can become that kind of instrument, we're failing the plan. We're failing the growth of the cause. Sometimes we find that the nature of the cause, or whatever is the present activity or focus, is not attractive to people. We have to make sure they're connected with the essential roots of the divine texts. And in this same Advent of Divine Justice, Shoghi Effendi says that we should seek out the souls and attract them and deepen them. And after they become consolidated, after they're firm believers, introduce them to the body of their fellow believers. How many people are tested to death by the rest of us and lose faith? It's a pity. So in your individual teachings, watch the seekers that you're talking to. Maybe you don't feel capable of communicating in the right way, or you know somebody else in the community would be a better combination, and that's fine, do that. But don't hesitate to keep some of these seekers to yourself until you've got them where they're thrilled with prayer and they understand the basis of obligatory prayer and fasting, and have some foundation to survive the rigors of community life. There were a few things.
Can we choose who we invite them to, introduce them to?
Can you choose what?
Can we choose who we introduce them to?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear.
It says, can we choose who we introduce them to? Our seekers.
Selectively.
Yeah, that's all right. In most of the places, the routine at the moment is you say, I have somebody who's interested in the faith. Oh, get them in Ruhi Book 1. They don't know who Baha'u'llah is yet. Just because Ruhi Book 1 doesn't go elaborate very much on who Baha'u'llah is, or what the Baha'i faith is, for that matter. So it's important that the overview of the cause, that they have been exposed to an overview of the cause, in a manner similar to Shoghi Effendi's one definition of what the Baha'i faith is to the UN committee that was considering the future of the Holy Land. It is not always available, should be available. I can put this also on the list if you want to receive this.
Yes.
This is so marvelous because it's Shoghi Effendi's summary of what the Baha'i faith is. And he lists the basic teachings, he lists the purpose of the faith, he lists the outcome of what it's producing in the souls of the mission, his mission. What's the aim of Baha'u'llah? The explanation of progressive revelation is the only place he outlines 9 aspects of progressive revelation. Very helpful. So you can find this, I don't know where it is online. This is 1947, he wrote this. And at the request of the UN committee that approached the faith, what are you doing in the Holy Land? You know, what's the role of different groups and religions in the Holy Land? And it's on that basis that he makes this terrific definition.
Baha'is-library.com.
It's there? That's excellent.
It's on Baha'ilibrary.com.
Okay. If you want the breakdown version, you put that in your request.
Is there a forward to that explains what you just said about the UN asking Shoghi Effendi?
No, there's a letter from the Guardian about it, but it's not online, it's not published, but I know. He did a similar one in 1930, was it 34? I don't know, to the High Commissioner of Palestine at the time, when the city of Haifa decided to build a major road right in front of the Shrine of the Bab. And he brought attention to the High Commissioner and so on that this would
He got pretty upset about that.
it'd be terribly inappropriate. And why? And the road never existed. It became the Ark Path, which looked like it was going to be public for a long time, but never got to that stage, and now it's safeguarded the sanctity of the whole center there. The sanctuary that is the center of the cause on Mount Carmel. A few thoughts that came to me. We're able to go back to the notes, the further notes that are here about the essential verities. These, Shoghi Effendi refers to them again in God Passes By in chapter 6. And you can find all these here. So I prefer to just go on with some other general comments, since you'll have access to that if you wish. This is not just quotes from the dispensation, it's quotes from the Guardian's writings over a broad period. One word was mentioned yesterday that immediately awakens me, and that's the term fetra that Todd introduced us to here. Fetra. This is the endowment that God has given to each soul. It's the basis of his soul. In the case of the manifestation of God, it makes him a revelator. And the opposition of the Baha'is to Baha'u'llah, they were saying that Baha'u'llah did not have the fetra of a manifestation of God. Baha'u'llah has written some interesting tablets refuting those problems of the Babis. One of the titles of the Sobe Azel of Mirza Yahya was the fruit. And in the elaboration, Baha'u'llah says the fruit, while it's fresh, is marvelous. But a little few days after, look what's happened to it, so to speak. Fetra. So we have an endowment in us filled with mysteries and treasures from the bounty of God. And this is, you'll after hearing that, if you haven't already recognized it, you'll see it in different passages in the writings, references to it. And the fact that to illumine me with the light of this inner endowment is one of the aims of the spiritual transformation. Thinking about this in the past, you know, in the writings we're told that the oneness of mankind, we're all the same. And yet we are reflections of the name of God, the unique, the one, the incomparable. All these things come at our souls. How can we be both all the same and infinitely different? Each one of us with a fetra, each one of us with an endowment that is not like the endowment of any other soul ever, past or future. You are a unique being. If you do not develop the qualities which allow you to bear forth with these fruits and these bounties that are in your fetra, they will never be a part of contribution to society and the growth. And since that facet of your being is unique, that means creation is without it if you don't develop it. Anybody thinks they're not important, excuse me. Every one of us is important because of that. Maybe our endowment means that we're a big loving mama. It doesn't mean necessarily we're the head of the university or something of the sort. It's all different aspects of it. I wondered how is it that this difference exists? And one of the aspects of this Kunto Kansa McPhee and the commentary on the hidden treasure that was mentioned yesterday, in the fourth part about attaining to knowledge, Baha'u'llah addresses the question which has arisen: why do the great mystics, the great spiritual visionaries, speak about God and the Holy Spirit in different terms that don't always seem to jibe together? And Abdu'l-Baha makes a reference there. From my point of view, it's from a provisional translation where he says that it's because of the dominant name of God in their character, which immediately suggests to us that we all have the range, the full range of the divine attributes, because also Baha'u'llah says everyone can reflect all the attributes of God. So if we can reflect all of them and that makes us all the same, where is the difference? And it becomes the outcome of that kind of thinking to say that they must be proportional. You've got a primary name of God. You've got a secondary name of God, a third. These are the main parts of your character. And we see that in each other. And Ria Khanum kind of immortalized it in a play she wrote about the growing pains of a spiritual assembly, where one of the members is expressive of wisdom, another one of justice, and a lady who was constantly harping on mercy and compassion. And the characters, every item that comes, they speak to that item from their dominant name. I witnessed it in the House of Justice, the same thing. You knew so-and-so when this came up. His take on all of this is in this direction, and his contribution will be like that. Something about the miracle of 9 contributions of that sort result in the health of the spiritual assembly, in the spontaneity of it, in its moving forward in its services. More and more as the members themselves draw close to the bounties and gifts of their own fetras. So this is a responsibility that we have in serving on institutions, is to constantly looking after the improvement of our own inner beings, so that the light and the contributions of those can flow into the consultation or into the gatherings, whatever it might be. So I was musing on those imaginations of mine and thought, well, what else can confirm this in some way? And then reading a tablet from the Gleanings, hello Gleanings lovers, where Baha'u'llah, after he talks about the souls, by the way, there's nothing as great as acceptance of Baha'u'llah. He wants you to obey. He puts that there too, but he is the all-seeing, he's the ever-forgiving, he's the most compassionate, and somehow the question of our having accepted Baha'u'llah puts us in a very different category from a whole lot of other beings on the planet. Except those that have never heard because we haven't told them. The Shaghi Effendi said. What about these other souls? He says, well, they need to be told by the Baha'is. And he says in this passage, those that attain to the Crimson Ark and so on, he said they will be ushered into the presence of the messengers of God of the past, who will inquire of them that which they have suffered in the path of God. Friends, if it's little you're suffering, sounds like the interview will be very short. Moves on from that point to say that they will move on then to wish to witness the reality of every sanctified soul. What's that? What's that all about? Again, the sanctified soul is the soul that has attained to the light of those names and attributes which constitute his unique or her unique inner being. And that soul will reflect these names and attributes of God in a way that no other soul has ever reflected them. And we will want to see that, because every one of those souls will add a facet to our understanding of our Creator, because we embody that light and can embody that light. So I don't know, you hope you'll get there and have something to offer, but on the other hand, I hope I just have the chance to witness some of those souls. And of course we witness them here in this world to a certain degree too. I think you're moving around, you see people whose eyes are, Baha'is whose eyes are so bright. And you say, what's going on? What is going on with them? They're not always intellectual or something of the sort, but they have the light of the Spirit, and you feel it. We all have it off and on, I suppose. Sometimes Abdu'l-Baha says, look in the eyes and you can see what's growing in the soul. That's when I want to get my dark glasses out. So you know, you take this theme, Petra, and it just starts expanding and going everywhere in so many ways. But we want to look at the promises of divine confirmation, of the importance of imploring and asking. There's one instruction from Abdu'l-Baha talking to the teachers in the United States, a couple of them. He said that when you want to speak about the faith, when you're being called to give a talk about the faith, he said, do not think up what are you going to say ahead of time. Do not do that. Remain blank. Remain focused on asking confirmation so that what the Spirit wants to speak through you will come through you. So, I don't know why we're not teaching these things, but
Where is that?
it's in the ether somewhere.
It's in the cloud.
It's in the cloud.
That's not.
No, but you can think of other passages that say that, you know, that never speak from your own self.
Right.
And the tablet for Baha'is in the West Coast here to say from the tablets of the Divine Plan is so indicative of the nature we have to adopt, the humility and also the soaring character of what the Baha'i teacher should be. I think we need to go back to some solid texts here. Look at this promise from Baha'u'llah. Were mankind to heed in a befitting manner no more than one word of such a praise, he's talking about the praise of God in the Revelation, it would be so filled with delight as to be overpowered and lost in wonder. Entranced, it would then shine forth resplendent above the horizon of true understanding. The absorption of the praise, the words of the praise of God, result in us being entranced and shining forth resplendent. This is the basic process of what's happening, why the revelation has come, what the human soul should be doing. What kind of a world will we have when we've got a majority of people tuned into this? What fruits of the other world will come down to us? Abdu'l-Baha tablet that was found in the archives that people hadn't known about, and it passed up to the House of Justice, was a tablet from Abdu'l-Baha to one of the friends when he was here in the United States. He said that the greatness of this revelation is such that the powers of the kingdom, the conditions of the kingdom, everything that's possible to come into this world will come into this world through the attraction of the revelation and the believers. You will see great advances, changes. If you think of, we're not very good at history, but we can, those of us that are old enough know how different it was when we were young to what it is now, the general milieu of mankind, the conditions. But together with all of this misery and hatred and everything that's going on, also these marvelous inventions are being filtered out into the world. And those are the gifts of the revelation and the gifts of the kingdom. And in this tablet, Abdu'l-Baha says, the conditions of heaven will, to the degree possible in this material realm, manifest themselves. Centuries we've wanted to fly. Now everybody's flying. And even Mr. Linga said, Chogyam Effendi said that it will become so universal that there won't be any need for highways. Even individual travel will be in the air. Interesting hint, you know. Then think of other things. I mean, just the whole nature of communication, how it's become so universal and so quick. And Abdu'l-Baha says in this tablet, you will see how in the future anyone that wishes to speak to anyone else will be able to see them, will be able to do that face to face at any moment that they wish. The Baha'is read that and they said, oh, we'll hide this one. Who can understand what possibly? How's that? It's impossible. How can everybody be everywhere at the same time, meeting each other face to face? What a terrific. House was very delighted to see that, as you can imagine. We don't have any idea yet to conceive what will happen, even with the process of the lesser peace that the houses indicate. This is a process is taking place until we get to the actual accomplishment of it. Then we are called upon, that's the political unification, that's the outer unification, the lesser peace of mankind. Still unrecognizing that the source of it are the energies and dynamic pouring forth from Baha'u'llah's words. Chogyam Effendi says the next stage, and he's outlined the stages of the future very completely, and he says the next stage will be that the Baha'is will be called upon to spiritualize that unification. Political unification has to be spiritualized through the spread, acknowledge, and acceptance of Baha'u'llah's teachings. The widespread conversion of races and peoples and nations into the faith. Then that brings us to the threshold of the emergence of the world order of Baha'u'llah, because as more and more people become Baha'is in communities, they will wish to conform more and more to the teachings of the cause, and that will give birth to the embodiments of Baha'i sovereignty. And when Chogyam Effendi outlines these in the message that he sent for the end of the Intercontinental Conference in Chicago in 1953, he outlines the stages of the future. And interestingly enough, he cites the verses of light from the Quran that Todd's talking about, and the oil which is so pure that it's luminous without fire. He likens to the light that is born through crushing the kernel of the Bab's existence, is lit within the heart of Baha'u'llah and the Siyachal. That light of this eternal light that's mentioned in the Quran. So there's that further tie-in with that development. Then he talks about the birth of state religion. The Baha'i faith will become this state religion. We're not going to be ruling when we're 30, 35 or 40% of the population, but at that stage, we're a powerful influence. and will be recognized as the leading faith as the other ones are disintegrating and falling apart and so on. Then from that, you have the embodiment of Baha'i government. Baha'i states will be born. And this world commonwealth is established by the House of Justice, which is the majority. When the majority of states have become Baha'i states, the world commonwealth is born. And the world commonwealth then is the threshold, if you will, the base stone of the kingdom of the Father on earth, the Christ promised kingdom. And still we haven't gotten to the divine civilization. He says all those elements will then give birth to a divine civilization. We know that we're talking about the Baha'i era, the Baha'i dispensation, this initial one, the mother dispensation of the Baha'i epoch, maybe 1,000 years before we have another revelator, or maybe 5 or maybe 10,000 years. But the point is that it's towards the end of the dispensation, Shoghi Effendi repeatedly said that the elements of divine civilization will come into being. I don't think anybody can really conceive what the elements of divine civilization are, you know. Horace Holly has been quoted as saying that the essence of Baha'i unity is not a decision on the part of the believers to try to get along with each other. The essence of Baha'i unity is that through the revelation of Baha'u'llah, the souls move towards Baha'u'llah as the center, and in that motion become increasingly united, increasingly blessed, increasingly the source of upliftment to those around them. See if you can find that message. It's in these messages to the Baha'i world in the supplement section at the back, and it kind of gets lost sometimes. Try to find that and add that into your repertoire of study. I was so loving the idea of the wali, being the guardian, being the wali. And your faithful brother, he kindly puts it in English, but the servant of his threshold in Persian. And the guardian, it seems, what I could understand in the interactions with the older believers in the Holy Land, the guardian for the Persians was a king. For us, he was like a brother. He downplays it for the West till we can get used to the idea. But in his messages in the East, Shoghi Effendi would reveal his own connection with the next world in ways that we didn't always see in the Western messages. For instance, he sends 2 cables, different cables, fairly close to each other. One about Martha Root and another one about May Maxwell, where he talks about these souls ascending into the concourse on high, and the inmates of the realms on high rushing forth with chalices of light. Well done, O faithful maidservant. How do you write about that if you don't see it? The friends are suffering a new attack by the enemies. Shoghi Effendi in his message says that the sorrows of the next world at their sufferings and the beauty of their endurance. And Baha'u'llah himself addresses you at this moment from the realm on high. Then there's a long paragraph of Baha'u'llah and Baha'u'llah's writing style that the Guardian has now contributed years after Baha'u'llah has passed on and stopped writing. What is that? This blessed pearl, this Shoghi Effendi is so, we need to be oft returning. The House of Justice in its constitution says it derives its direction and authority, through and in cognizance of Shoghi Effendi's guidance. We should, I haven't gotten to talking about God passes by. Here's the summary of the first 100 years of the faith through the eye of this chosen guardian. I don't know if you realize how many contradictory stories and elements there are in Persian, in the Baha'i community, in the history books, things that contradict each other. One of the accounts says that no, the Bab didn't take Mullah Hussein to his house. He declared at the gate when they were standing at the gate.
Mm-hmm.
And then another 10 other versions.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here, Nightmare. Shoghi Effendi. Shoghi Effendi, as the interpreter, has defined what Baha'i history is. And he did the same thing with the Dawnbreakers. He edited it as well as translated it. So that gives us a unified source of looking at Baha'i history. It may be not forbidden to know about all these other accounts, some of which may have some other aspects of truth to them. But the point is, we've got one that keeps us unified in the way we look at Baha'i history. This is a terrific gift.
Yeah.
Otherwise, we say, well, no, my grandfather said that was different, or my great-grandfather has written and he was there, and that's not the way it happened, Boy, it's very confusing. I mean, it's an immense, this field of contradictions in Baha'i history. That's another gift of Shoghi Effendi.
Yes.
Quarter of 12. I think, are we going till 12? Is it 12:30, 12? I don't know.
At 12, and
We stop at 12.
Yes.
So then I'd like to open the room to questions of any nature
as you wish.
that I'm sure Todd's over there, he can help me answer. If you have any leftovers from prehistory, Islamic prehistory there. We were talking, there's a letter from the Guardian, he said, no one can understand Baha'u'llah's revelation who is not familiar with the Quran and the teachings of Muhammad. Guardian has written it several times. We're just, I think, he's tickled us about the immensity of our ignorance in regard to Islam and Islamic teachings. Please.
Who has the sign-up sheet for purchasing or whatever the notes?
Someone was going to put a sheet out. Did we get a sheet out on the table there, maybe over where these books were? We could do that. And also then you can approach also Matt afterwards and give him your email address. Okay, that was an easy question.
When the station of the Guardian is, when you define it as the Guardian kind of defining history, pre-Guardian, it's almost as if, well, everything that's happened since then is not history, because there won't be a defining or a clarification or that we're kind of living in an age where it won't be clarified.
Except for Century of Light, we got in the house.
Century of Light brings it up to date a bit, like till the turn of the century, till the century.
Our history is being captured in a way that it wasn't being captured then. It wasn't,
I think that, you know, the definition after the first 100 years isn't as critical and important as after that. After that, there's a lot of us looking at it and we'll have different views, and maybe we're just allowed to have different views.
You're kind of far from the mic there.
Maybe we're allowed to have different views about, please.
Do we know, what do we know about Shoghi Effendi's intellectual formation? I know he went to school in Beirut and then to England, but his grasp of history, philosophy is, you know, something that, but I've never really heard much about. I mean, did he look at this school of thought, or did he study? I mean, do we know much about his studies?
Not a whole lot, except we know his tutor was Abdul Baha.
Yeah.
That was a big help.
That's a big help.
There's a lot of inspiration, I think, involved.
Yeah.
In the Islamic instance, where these offices acquired form, Wali and Nabi, and even the idea of manifestation is hammered out in pre-Shaykhi writings and further nuanced and elaborated by Shaykh Ahmad, and then became sort of part of the music of the Baha'i revelation. The Wali is the Imam, and the Imam receives a special species of divine revelation. It's not called revelation, it's called inspiration, ilham, as opposed to wahi, or as distinct from wahi. So we have to assume that I think the Guardian was a channel for this inspiration to flow. I think that's a reality in the way in which certainly the way in which the Baha'i faith would understand itself as continuing the authority in the community. That the Holy Spirit is never absent from the workings of the cause.
Well, there's actually a talk by by Amato Bahariya Khanum, where she says, they asked Shoghi Effendi, does he have any divine knowledge? He says, no. But when he has a believer come to him and they talk to him about a situation, he has an intuitive sense, no, that's not what happened. This is what happened. And so there's a divine inspiration that's also happening, perhaps because of the guidance of Abdul Baha, and he has an intuitive connection with something beyond us, and he understood the nature of things. He was able to penetrate the nature of things and then address them and resolve them.
But not necessarily in different sciences. He said he's not infallible in economics or Baha'i things that protect the integrity of the faith. You feel that that's there and it's not going to go away. There's no way to refute them.
There's an element of there's an element of the Guardian's formation that is accessible in the Priceless Pearl, maybe elsewhere, which is that when the Guardian was a baby and in the cradle, Abdul Baha arranged for the leading Quran chanter to come and chant to him every week. Passages from the Quran into the baby's ear. I'm not making this up. This is from Rahir Hanum in the Priceless Pearl. So this is definitely a part of the Guardian's, if you like, education and training.
I remember being in the mosque in Adrianople where the tryst was to have taken place between Baha'u'llah and Mirza Yahya with Hossein Amanat, the architect of so many of the buildings at the World Center and of the shrine now of Abdu'l-Baha. And he had made friends with the Muazzin, so he took me to meet the Muazzin, and the Muazzin, he asked him to give a sample of his chanting. And he raised the call to prayer there inside the mosque. My God, if he did that in the ear of Shoghi Effendi, he would have done some damage, I think. I hope it was chanted at the proper level. It was very interesting. He took us up to the balcony where the sultans would sit during the prayer sessions. They had their own place where they could pray. And of course, maybe still led by an imam and it was quite a simple area, but it had a nice carpet, and it had a little door in it. And he opened the door, and there was a passage, like from here to Todd or something like that, and then a window at the end of the passage. So he said, go down, walk down there. So we proceeded to walk to the window, and the window looks out on a little garden, an enclosed garden, with the tombs of past sultans. He said, this is for the edification, this was for the edification of the sultans. That's where you're gonna end up, so watch your steps, so to speak. Yes, please.
There's at least 4 lists going around, so I'm gonna suggest that they all get planted in the end on the black tablecloth in front of you, on your table, so that you'll have everybody's.
Okay, thank you so much. We'll do our best to organize those. And, yeah. Don't hesitate to complain if after a week you haven't gotten some response, okay? Sir?
Todd, I have a question for you. Did you say Badi, B-A-D-I apostrophe what?
It's B-A-D-I accent. You know how we have the accents? Like if you see the word Quran written in the writings, it usually has an accent, a slanting accent over the A.
Over the A.
Yeah, that means it's a long vowel.
Yeah, Quran.
Yeah, that's right. In the word Badi, it has a similar accent, which means a long vowel, except in that case, it's an I. So it's Badi. The I has an accent on it, that's all.
Oh, I
So
see.
there's
So
not
it's just
another
Badi.
There is another letter.
There's nothing after the I with the accent.
The I.
Oh, there is, there's an Ain, which is a vowel that we don't have, a consonant that we don't have. It's the same consonant that is the first letter of Abdu'l-Baha's name. It's represented by that little C before the A. You know, when we write the word Abdu'l-Baha, there's a little, looks like an apostrophe before the A. Yeah, that represents the same letter that ends the word Badi. Okay, thanks for the question, because I'm sure everybody else was at sea with this as well. I must learn how to be clear.
If you figure that out, let us know.
Please.
I have a question. It's a very basic question. What would you suggest, you or Todd, is the best way to study the Quran?
Make friends with Muslims. And I'm absolutely deadly serious. And you'll find out that there's a different kind of soul in there that we aren't aware of in our experience in our life. And then read the Quran. And there's a great website called Islam Awakened online that has about 70 English translations for each verse. For each verse, and there's not all Qurans are translations are equal in that they all fail. Right? Okay, but some are a little better in some areas than others. So if you really want to, you can, there are some favorite ones like Yusuf Ali, I like, the Abdullah Yusuf Ali. It's a great translation. It's got a lot of notes and it's got the Arabic on the side if you were looking into Arabic, for example. The Arthur Arbery, the George Sale, which the Guardian used for a while. Rodwell is the one that the Guardian recommended, and it's very beautiful. But the Guardian, when the Guardian recommended Qurans, there were not a lot of them. We have a lot more now, English translations. So there are a number of them that you can use. You can't make a mistake.
Which do you use?
I use a variety of them. I use Yusuf Ali, I use Abdul Halim, he's at this SOAS at the University of London. There's a new one coming that's going to be pretty good, pretty interesting in a new way, by a scholar at Yale University. His last name is Turawa. I will spell it for you. Toorawa, and it will be called the Devotional Quran. And it's a very beautiful, poetic translation. He doesn't translate the entire Quran, so it might be easier to begin with something like that. And it should be, it should be out in April or May or something like that. But the Guardian also, through his secretary or his co-workers, suggested that we should study the Quran according to topics as well. Like read the stories of the messengers, for example, or study the way in which light occurs. You can make your own list of things and go that way. And remember that the confusion and discomfiture that you feel reading an English Quran doesn't exist when the Muslim reads the Quran, because whenever there's a rough spot in the meaning that's being conveyed, the music carries you through it. The music of the Arabic carries you through it. And this is what we don't have. It's like Robert Frost's dictum, poetry is that which is lost in translation, right? In the case of the Quran, it's this music which resolves a lot of the it looks like it starts in the middle of nowhere and it jumps from one topic to the other, and and some translations are really bad, and some translations are only a little bit bad, and some translations are the least, but none of them are completely successful in conveying this thing. So it's a job. You need to, ask your assembly to appoint the Muslim person for the community, the Islamic person for the community, and ask them to have meetings with the Quran and Islamic studies in the community. We were commanded to do this in 1939 while Hitler was invading Poland, right? The Guardian said, this is an important thing to do. It's not too late. We can still do it. There should be imagine how the world would be looking at Islam today if the Baha'is had really done their job, and, as the Guardian said, vindicated Islam to the West. He says that verbatim. That's not a pilgrim's note. That's not. The Baha'is must vindicate Islam to the north, to the West, right? And we have had that on the back burner far too long. So we need to really get after it.
And Todd, you said that, sorry to keep this going, but you said in your talk yesterday that the Kitabi Igan helped better than any other book to spread.
This is a miracle.
Say it again.
Well, it's the most widespread Quran commentary in the world in translation. It's been translated in more languages than any other Quran commentary. It is a Quran commentary. It explains passages of the Quran, and the Baha'is are an otherwise unlikely group. Guardian makes this point in something I read. That there's this group that are so far removed from the world of Islam, but who had this deep love for Muhammad all over the world. And they have an opportunity to help rescue Islam from this horrible fate that it's experiencing now in the world CNN and all the rest of it, you know? Or our own prejudicial institutions and educational systems. Baha'i should lobby every school board to teach about the heroism of Muhammad, the prophet of God. There's no reason on earth why he should not be there and be talked about and admired and revered along with all the other heroes of history. But nobody else is going to do it. That, you know, the Muslims are suffering a kind of a Stockholm syndrome. Right? They're you know, they're heartbroken about the way in which their religion is understood. They don't feel, and when they finally do burst forth, they're terrorists or jihadists, because they're so torn up about the way in which they're you know, this is the way their grandmothers believed they loved their family. These are the most beautiful things in their life, and they come over here and it's treated like, you know what? So we have to help. We have to rescue them.
May I offer one last thing? You and I talked about this the other day. There's a book by Martin Lings called Muhammad, His Life, based on earliest sources. It's a fantastic book, and from a personal level, I think of it kind of like vignettes. There's little stories about the early life of Muhammad, and they're very beautifully written, and Todd has said it's authoritative, it's a good book, and it's an easy way to sort of approach Muhammad for a layman.
Yeah, it's true.
Repeat that, I'm sorry.
So it's,
The book?
the book is Muhammad, His Life, based on earliest sources, and the author is Martin Lings. You could get ebooks of that, as well as the Muhammad Abdullah Yusuf Ali's translation of the Quran, which is my favorite and one that he reads. That's also ebook. But again, Muhammad, His Life, based on earliest sources by Martin Lings. They have ebooks version.
Spell his last name.
Lings. Very basic. Wonderful book. Wonderful book.
Thank you so much.
Yeah.